Did you know that spring starts tomorrow? Doesn't look like it out there. I was looking at the weather forecast earlier today for the rest of the week and into next weekend, and maybe by the middle of next week it'll all be gone. Thank you, Jesus. So welcome to the third Sunday of Lent and to the third installment of our Lenten series. It's all about willpower, you know. Willpower, because more often than not, we lack willpower and therefore give ourselves a license to sin. How are you doing with your prayer challenge? You getting into it? You up to 8 minutes? I know that seems like a lot. Yeah. A little overwhelming, maybe? 8 minutes. How am I going to find 8 minutes? Oops, I dropped my card. How am I going to find 8 minutes in my schedule the way it is to pray? It's easy to get overwhelmed. Yeah? And in fact, that's oftentimes how our lives are, very overwhelming. Well, the fact of the matter is that willpower draws on the very same source of strength that feeds our bodies, our minds, our souls. Each successful act of self-control diminishes, it drains the wellspring of strength that we use for all aspects of our lives. It really, really does. Resisting tempting treats, it doesn't just strengthen the desire or trigger the craving for chocolate, it actually makes us procrastinate. Controlling emotions doesn't just lead to emotional outbursts, but it makes us more likely to spend money on things that we really shouldn't be spending money on, things that we don't really need. In other words, self-control deteriorates over time, and people who use their self-control run out of it. People who use willpower run out of it. It's the way things are, because that's... it drains us of our strength. And when you hear the story of the Israelites in the Old Testament, the first reading, it makes perfect sense. They're experiencing something similar, because in their thirst for water, the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "Why did you ever make us leave Egypt? Was it just to have us die here of thirst with our children and our livestock?" It's pretty obvious that the Israelites, you read that passage and you say, you know what, they're tired, they're worn out, and they're just plain old fed up with everything that they've had to endure up to this point in their journey, and all that's been asked of them, and all they want is water to drink. But the interesting thing, it's even more than that water to drink. In other aspects of this story, other sections of this story, they even say, we want to go back to Egypt, if you can imagine that. Because it was there in Egypt that they experienced something that was very comfortable. And in their thirst, they were looking for something that was just going to get them to that point where stop, go away, leave me alone. And if that meant going back to a life of slavery, so be it. That's what they were looking for. Isn't that true for us over the course of our day? As the day drags on, we go to that place where we're going to be most comfortable, where we can leave me alone. By the time you get to the stuff that really matters, like at the end of the day, you say, I got to go to the gym and exercise a little bit. That ain't going to happen. I got to keep my cool when my children turn my couch into a finger painting, what is it? You know what I'm trying to say. I lost the word. I get to the end of the day, and I know I'm supposed to stay away from it, but I go seek out that emergency pack of cigarettes, or whatever the little bad habit is that you have. You go looking for it at the end of the day. At the end of the day, you just say, you know what? I'm tired of the schoolwork. I'm just not going to do it anymore. And you want me to pray as well? Are you kidding? I'm exhausted. I can't do that. You find yourself out of willpower because you're exhausted. Makes sense. The failure says nothing about your personal virtue, and that's really important to understand. It's not about your virtue. It has everything to do with willpower itself. And it gets frustrating. You want to do these things, and at the end of the day, you say, I don't have the energy to deal with it. I can't do this. And that's what Moses is experiencing. What shall I do with this people? A little more, and they will stone me. You can hear his frustration. Indeed, what are we to do? How am I to handle all of this? Well, it seems that the mental task of self-control, it does take a toll on our physical strength. And doing the kind of things that increase physical strength really do help increase self-control. It's like giving water to a thirsty plant. Give it some water, and all of a sudden it perks up a little bit. It turns out that there really is a predictor of the lack of physical strength, and that predictor, believe it or not, is something as simple as low blood sugar. Anybody who experiences diabetes and those kinds of illnesses, health concerns, knows that the level of sugar in your blood is really important. Low blood level sugars, affect you from giving up on difficult tasks to lashing out when you get angry. In fact, scientists who have found that people with low blood sugar tend to rely more on stereotypes and are less likely to do things like be charitable and help others. In fact, it's as if running low on energy biases us to be the worst version of ourselves. So, interestingly, a sugar boost is going to help you become the best version of yourself, because it's going to make you more persistent and less impulsive, and more thoughtful and less selfish. Now, it seems ridiculous to think this, or to say this even, but it's true also of prayer. Prayer drains us of our energy. And I've tried to explain this to people, and some people look at me like I have three heads. But this 1 hour of work, and it's the only hour I work all week, right? You know that, don't you? Because it's the only hour that you ever see me working, so it must be the only hour that I work. But this 1 hour of work is truly spiritually and emotionally and even physically draining. It doesn't seem possible, but it is. And interestingly, the church law, the law of the church, the canon law of the church, says that a priest should only say one Mass a day. Did you know that? Yeah, it's in the law of the church. One Mass a day, priest, only one Mass. If there's absolutely necessary, you can say two, but only if it's absolutely necessary, and absolutely not three. Today, guess what? And every Sunday, I'll say 3 Masses. Now, I'm not telling you that to complain, because I love to say Mass, and I love doing what I'm doing. It's a joy to be able to celebrate the liturgy with you and for you, but by the end of the day, I'm exhausted. Go away and leave me alone. A shot of sugar can really help boost that short-term willpower. But in the long run, mainlining sugar just is not going to cut it. You can't do that. It's not a good strategy for self-control. In stressful times, it's especially tempting to run to those kinds of foods that are high fat, high sugar, the kind of things that when a little bit after it, the food coma thing sets in, right? You know that. People who are interested in nutrition, you understand all of that kind of stuff. So a better plan is really to make sure that you get your body well fueled. And I talk about this because the relationship between having physical strength and spiritual strength and emotional strength, it's all intertwined, it's all connected. If you lose in one, you're going to lose the other. And it may take some real self-control to shift in the direction that you need to go to stay not just healthy, but to have energy, to eat the right kind of meals, not skipping meals, and snacking on things that are good instead of things that are sugary. There's going to be a greater payback in your willpower. And that's where the prayer challenge really comes in, because in a similar way, we need to strengthen our ability to take that time in prayer. And really the only way to do it is a little bit at a time. That's why I offer you that 30 seconds. Start with 2 minutes. And just start with 2 minutes. Don't say, oh, I did 2 minutes. That one's so fast, I'll do 2 more. No, start with 2 minutes. And then add 30 seconds. Don't add 35 seconds and don't add 25 seconds. Add 30. And then 30 more and then 30 more. That's why by now you should be up to 8 minutes. Because if you do it that way, a little bit at a time, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised at how you're able to be restored, and the self-control and the willpower that you need is strengthened. That's really what Jesus in this gospel is offering this woman at the well. Something to restore her willpower. Whoever drinks the water I shall give will never thirst. The water I shall give will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. Because she was indeed physically thirsty, but he recognized that because she was indeed spiritually thirsty. She was tired and worn out. And we know that. You know that her life was a drudgery because the gospel tells us that she comes to the well at noon. No one went to the well at noontime in the heat of the day, carrying a large jar filled with water. You don't do that in that part of the world. You go first thing in the morning when it's still a little cool. And that's what she did. So we have to, there's other indications. If you'll read the longer version of this gospel passage, this story, you get the sense that there are other things going on in this woman's life that says her life is a drudgery, and she is absolutely in need of something that's going to give her the strength to carry on. And when Jesus offers her this water, she makes the only sensible request. Sir, give me this water so that I may not be thirsty or have to keep coming back here to draw more water. Here's the water that you need to train your willpower, to give up the license to sin. You know what it is? You know what this water is? It's baptism. It's the water of baptism. And it's the water that washes away sin. It's the water that refreshes. It's the water that gives us purpose. It removes sin. In removing sin, it strengthens our I won't power. Maybe this week, commit to not swearing or any bad habit of speech. Just that simple thing, and just for this week, make that commitment. Say, I won't do that. And see how other sinful aspects of your life are washed away. It refreshes, this water refreshes our lives. It strengthens our I will power. And maybe this week commit to doing something that you wouldn't normally do, especially something that you don't do. And that might be something like, on your way home from work, stop at church for some Eucharistic adoration on Wednesday, just for 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. Don't try to go for 3 hours. Just go for 5 minutes. Say hello. How you doing? I'm here. And goodbye. Do that. Try it. I will do that. You see, when you're trying to make a big change or transform an old habit, look at small ways, small things that you can do to practice the kind of self-control that strengthens willpower but doesn't completely overwhelm it. And then the third thing is to restore, or rather to give us real purpose. The third thing is real purpose. This water gives us real purpose. It strengthens our I want power. What do you really want? Have you ever thought about that? What do you really want in life? I ask that question to people and they look at me like, huh? I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean, what do I really want? Isn't that obvious? Well, yeah, it is obvious, but I think what happens is we feel like we have to give this complicated response that I want to have all these plans laid out, that I'm going to do this, 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 and this, and really it's a very simple thing. It's a really simple thing. What do you want in life? What do you really want most? It's not complicated. In fact, it's probably staring you right in the face. The biggest willpower challenge, consider this. How is this going to make your life better? How succeeding at this challenge will your life be better? How succeeding at this challenge will the life of the people around you be better? Your family and your friends. Who else will benefit if you succeed in this challenge? And then can you imagine what your life would be like if indeed you did succeed at this challenge? How will you feel about yourself as you make progress? And is the short-term discomfort worth the long-term benefit? Prayer. How will you benefit from taking the time every day to pray? How will others around you benefit if you take the time to pray? And how much will your life be better if you indeed do just that? And is it worth the temporary challenge to get to the long-term benefit? You see, it's simple. It's not complicated. This is what God told Moses to do. Go over there in front of the people, holding the staff with which you struck the river. Strike the rock, and the water will flow from it for the people to drink. And this Moses did. Just strike the rock with your staff. It's not complicated. It's really very simple. And sadly, the limits of self-control often present us with a bit of a paradox. I like that word. Do you like that word, paradox? I like that word. Do you even know what it means? You've heard it before. You say, I know that word. I've heard it. What does it mean? It's just basically two things that are opposite one another that really are connected. It's as simple as that. We can't control everything in our lives. Right? You know that. We can't control everything in our lives. And yet the only way to increase self-control is to stretch ourselves a bit, to go beyond the limits that we place in front of us. And that's what Moses has done. He strikes the rock, and then he says, okay, folks, here's the water. You got to drink it. You got to do this. And it's the same is true for me and you. Like a muscle, our willpower follows the same rule. Use it or lose it. Gain a benefit if we use it. We'll lose it if we don't. If you try to save your energy, you're going to become a card-carrying member of the WWAPC, the Worldwide Association of Procrastinators and Couch Potatoes. Because you're going to say, I'll pray later. Guess what? Later's not going to happen. At the same time, you can't say to yourself, well, I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to come to church every day for 3 hours and be on my knees praying. Guess what? Crash and burn. You're going to give yourself up to total collapse. The challenge is to train like a true athlete. Push your limits, but only so far. Pace yourself. And that's why I say only 30 seconds a day. No more, no less. And the result is you'll find strength in your motivation. You'll find your motivation strengthened. And when you feel weak, and you'll begin to look for ways to help your tired self make good choices. And it's then that you'll be able to give up that license to sin.